Alright, so in this video, I'm going to show you how we can use Python to create a pivot table in Excel. Alright, so I want to go to my Excel template, and it's going to be the Excel spreadsheet that I'll be using. Alright, so for the data set, I'll be using the data set from Data SF, which is going to be this community development projects by agency, program area, and funding source data set. And the table only has about 742 rows at this point. And here's the table itself. And I create a macro to generate this pivot table. So let me just give it a demo. If I go to View, Macros, and here I have a macro called create PT. And if I run the macro, it's going to create a pivot table on my demo worksheet. And I can rerun the pivot table as many times as I want. And it's going to be the operation that we're going to be mimicking in Python. And I'm going to put the pivot table on the reports worksheet. Alright, so here let me go into my VS Code. And I'll be using Pywin32's library. And let's see if I have the library installed. And to install the Pywin32 library, you want to use the command pip install Pywin32. Oh, and I'll also link some of the documentation reference that I use to create a pivot table in Excel. Alright, so from the import statement, let me increase the font size. I'm going to type import win32com.client, and I want to name this as win32. Now the first thing I want to do here is want to create an instance of the Excel application. And I'll name the object Excel app is equals to win32.dispatch. And we need to insert the application name, and it's going to be Excel.application. Next, I want to set the Excel's application visibility to true. And I'll reference the visible property, and I'll set the value to true. Alright, so let me go ahead and run this code block. And I'll put these two applications side by side. The reason why I like to use Pywin32 library to connect to Excel is because I'll be able to see everything in real time. Now to construct my workbook object to link to this Excel file. So I'll type Excel app.workbooks.open. And we need to provide the full file path. And let me decrease the font size. Then I want to reference to the data worksheet. So I can reference the WB object.worksheets. And I'm going to supply the worksheet's name. Alright, so if I go ahead and run these two lines, if I reference the WB workbook, I can use the name property to print the Excel's file name. If on the Excel's file path, I can use for file name property. Let me take a look. So I can't remember the property name. I might have to look it up. Here we have the worksheet object. If I do ws.name, and it's going to return the worksheet's name. Now I want to create the pivot table in my reports worksheet. I'll name the object ws report, and it's going to be workbook.worksheets and the worksheet name. And we name this to ws data. Alright, so let me insert notes. Create reference workbook. And it's going to be reference worksheets. And this will be launch Excel application. Alright, so let's do these. Let me increase the window size a little bit. Alright, so on the top, I want to create a function to clear all the pivot tables, giving the worksheets object as reference. And I'll name the function clear PTs. And the parameter name is going to be WS. Inside the function, I'm going to insert a loop. I'm going to say for pivot table for PT in WS. And you can reference all the pivot tables in a worksheet by using the pivot tables method. And if we want to delete a pivot table, we can reference PT's object dot table range 2 dot clear. And here I want to call the clear PT's function. Basically, every time when I create my pivot tables on the reports worksheet, I want to make sure that I clear everything first, then I'm going to recreate the reports. And it's going to be clear pivot tables. So here let me copy this pivot table to the reports worksheet. Oh, it should be here. And let me go ahead and create a function. Alright, so if I run line 19, it's going to delete every single pivot table on this report worksheet. Then we're going to create a PT cache connection. So the pivot table cache basically will store the data set in memory. And we can create an instance of the pivot table cache connection by referencing the workbook's reference dot pivot caches dot create. And I want to go to the Excel pivot table source type enumeration page. Alright, so here we can use these 5 different data source type as the report data reference or the connection type. And for Excel table, I'll be using Excel database enumeration type, and the value is going to be 1. So here I'm going to insert 1 to represent that I want to use an Excel table as the data source. Then I need to define my data set. So here I'm going to say WS data.range, and my table starts from cell A1. And I can reference my table by using the current region property. And I'll name the output as PT underscore cache. Then I want to create my pivot table. And let's name this to pivot table. And to create a pivot table, I'm going to reference the PT cache object that create pivot table. And here I need to specify where I want to insert the pivot table. And I want to insert the pivot table on my report tab. And let's insert the pivot table in cell, let's do B3. So I'm going to type WS report.range B3. And if we want to assign a name to your pivot table, we can do that using the second parameter. And let's call this pivot table my report summary. And this should be create a pivot table designer or editor. Alright, so if I run this code block, so this line here is going to create the pivot table designer, which is this right here. And from PT cache, because I already defined my table reference, so the designer is going to give me all the fields that I can insert to my pivot table. Now, if I want to configure your pivot table setting, so for example, if I want to toggle the grand total by row or by column, I can reference, and here let me name the output as PT. I can reference PT's object If I want to display grand total by column, I can set the property value to true. And if I want to hide the grand total by row, I can use row grand property to hide the grand total by row. And this will be toggle grand totals. We can also change the subtotal location. And this will be change subtotal location. And we can use subtotal locations method. 1 is top and 2 is going to be for bottom. And the next setting I want to show you is this report layout setting. And I know some people like to use different types of report layout. And here, let me go to the documentation page. So for the report layout type, if I want to change your pivot table layout as a regular table, then we use this Excel Tableau row layout type. And the value is going to be 1. And compact is going to be 0. Outline is going to be 2. And I'll use this Tableau row layout, and which is going to be 1. So this is going to be change report layout. And this is going to be pt.row axis layout. And the value is going to be 1 for Tableau. And as for the pivot table style, so these are all the pivot table styles that we can use. And I'm going to hover to one of the style. And I'm going to wait till the tooltips display. And sometimes it can take a couple of tries to display the tooltip. Right, so I already know the style name. So this is going to be change table, actually pivot table style. And we can specify a pivot table's style by using the table style to property, followed by the style name. And usually the style name is going to be pivot style, followed by the grouping name. So we have light, medium, and dark. I'm going to use medium and followed by the styles location. And we're going to count from the left. So this is going to be 7 plus 2. It's going to be 9. So this is going to be pivot table style, medium, 9. Alright, so we're going to insert the pivot table fields to the designer. And let's say I'm going to have multiple reports that use different pivot table fields. Alright, so I'm going to create a function to create the first report. Then you can follow the approach to modify the function to create the reports that you want. And let's call this insert pt field set1. And we're going to insert a pivot tables object as the parameter argument. And we're going to start out by inserting the row fields. I'm going to create a dictionary. Let's name this as field rows. And it's going to be a dictionary. Inside the field rows dictionary, we're going to insert the field name or column name that we want to insert to the rows section. And it's going to be the dictionary's name. And let's say I want to insert program name. Actually, not program name, program area. And agency name. Oh, this should be go here. I want to use these two fields. So I'll create two dictionary items in the field rows dictionary. Then reference PT's argument dot pivot fields. Then I'll insert the column name, program area, and this will be agency name. And I'll name the key as agency name. And for the pivot table field to insert to the rows section, I'm going to create another dictionary. I'll name this as field values. And let's take a look. Alright, so for the column, we are going to have values. And for values section, it's going to be program area and total. One is going to be count, the other one is going to be sum. Alright, so this is going to be field values. And I'll name the key as total. And this will be pt.pivotfields, followed by the column name. And this will be program area. Oh, and this will be program area. Now we can insert the fields to the pivot table designer. Alright, so from fields rows, I want to reference program area. And for the pivot table orientation, if we go to Excel pivot field orientation enumeration page, so here's the list with the value associated to each enumeration key. And count field is going to be 2, data field is going to be 4, page is going to be 3, heading is going to be 0, and row field is going to be 1. So we need to reference the orientation property. And we're saying that we want to insert this field to the rows group, and it's going to be 1. Then I want to set the level sequence. Using the position property. And I want to insert program area as the first field, followed by agency name. So I'll copy these 2 lines. And for agency name, the orientation is going to be 1, and position is going to be 2. Now I'm going to do the same for the data fields. And because the values field is already auto-populated by the designer, so we don't need to do anything. And this will be data field. And this will be row field. Let's name this as Pearl. Alright, so I'm going to reference value fields, and it's going to be program area. And the orientation is going to be 4, I think, right here. And for the function reference, if we go to Excel consolidation function enumeration page, so these are all the functions we can use or to insert to our pivot table. And count function is going to be -4112. I want to make this as count. And I can change the number format. And this will be program area. Using the number format property. And I want to set the number format to regular numbers with 0 decimal place. And I'll copy paste these 3 lines. And this is going to be total. Alright, so the orientation is going to be the same. And for the sum function, it's going to be 4157 minus 4157. And for the number format, I'm going to insert the $ symbol. Right, so that's the insert PD field set function, set number 1 function. And I'll call the pivot table function here. So create report. And once we create the pivot table, at this point, you can run additional VBA operations. So basically, anything you need to do to wrap up the automation. But for now, this is going to be everything I want to do in my Python script. All right, so I'm going to terminate this session. And I'll go to the report tab. Now if I press F5 to run the script. All right, so you have a typo. Oh, so I forgot to insert PD as the reference. All right, so we have created a pivot table. And we have another error. Alright, so this is going to be... Alright, so every time I need to debug the Python code related to Pywin32 library, and here I can see that everything's working fine. I usually will execute line by line. So let me do this. I'm going to run this code block. And I'll go ahead and run line 32, actually not 32, 34, all the way to 58. Alright, so at this point, I'm not running any error, so I'll run everything line by line. Now I'll go to the insert PD fields set function. And because my parameter name is the same as my pivot table object's name, so I can actually run each line one by one inside the function. Alright, so I'm not getting any error, so that means the script is working fine. Alright, let me try again. Alright, so this time I'm not getting error, and the pivot table is created. And if we look at the result, so I can see that everything is working correctly. Here we have the count of the program area field and the sum total of the total field. Alright, so this is going to be everything I'm going to share in this video, and hopefully you guys found this video useful. And I'll upload the source code on my website, and I'll link the link in the description below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.